Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll confess to you, this episode feels like it is long overdue because in over 1,200 episodes, we've never talked about this concept, which is crazy to me because we always hear that content is king, but I also know that so many of you busy entrepreneurs don't have the time to create your own content, whether it's articles, whether it's your own book. We are going to go deep with an incredible fellow entrepreneur who is incredibly talented in the world of content marketing and writing. So let me introduce you to her. Her name is Kristin Clark. Kristen is a ghostwriter and publisher who helps thought leaders, entrepreneurs, founders, and other amazing people build their brands, boost their credibility, and create a legacy by crafting compelling content that provides real value to their readers and resonates with their ideal audiences. Now, there's so many aspects of ghostwriting that I'm very excited for all of you to be introduced to, especially in the world of AI. Things are shaking up. It's easier than ever to create content, but the question is, what's the right content? What's the right format? How do we do it? How do we get it in front of people? These are all important questions, so I'm excited to explore them. Let's dive straight into my interview with Kristin Clark. All right, Kristen, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Heck yes. I'm honestly, selfishly a little bit excited because I want to learn so much from you today as well. Before we get into that stuff, take us beyond the bio. Who's Kristen? How did you start doing all these cool things?
Oh, gosh, I know. So I've always loved writing. I've always loved learning. So I was talking to a friend of mine, just a little synopsis. I taught English and business writing for 10 plus years at a local university in Southern California. And I wasn't making much. Honestly, I was making like 14 grand a year doing that. And so I was talking to a friend about it, and she said, you love writing so much, you love learning. I have an opportunity where you could start being a ghostwriter if you want to give it a whirl. And Brian, I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I got a chance to connect with thought leaders across all the industries, people I probably never would have been able to talk to. And I got to hear their unique perspectives. I got to really immerse myself in their world and then take everything that they were giving me and produce content that helped them further their message. So it felt like a win-win. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And I've been doing it ever since.
Yes, I love that overview. You and I were obviously talking off air about so many aspects of ghostwriting and the powers of it, as well as the misconceptions about ghostwriting. So, Kristen, I'm going to put you on the spot really early on in our conversation. Talk to us about what is ghostwriting. And really my question to you is, how's it different from just saying content marketing? What's the difference there? Because I think that too many people, they know that content marketing is a viable marketing channel for them, but they don't have the time. They don't have the resources. We outsource so many different aspects of our business. Why not outsource content? What is that gap that ghostwriting plugs?
I mean, that is a great question. So for me, ghostwriting, content marketing, I mean, at the end of the day, they're very similar, but what we're doing is, for me as a ghostwriter, and I can't necessarily speak to other ghostwriters, but for me, with the content marketing, what I do is I make sure that all the content that I'm working on and that I'm helping people with does two things. One, and this is the most important thing for me, is that it provides real value to their readers. So I'm not just interested in producing content for content's sake. I want it to be actionable. I want it to improve people's lives. And I want it to really deliver that value to the reader to keep them coming back. So that, as a ghostwriter, I think of myself as an advocate for the reader first and foremost, which means, Brian, that if let's say I'm ghostwriting something for you and you give me a whole bunch of information. I'm listening with the reader's ear. So I'm going to ask you, hey, can you give me a little more there? Well, that was an interesting concept, but it didn't go deep enough. Can you give me something actionable I can really do to improve my life? So that's one thing. And then I'm also, as a ghostwriter versus just a content marketer, I'm looking. Not that there's anything wrong with content marketers, don't get me wrong, but as a ghostwriter, what I'm also doing is I'm listening for your particular voice. I'm listening for what you've told me your goals are, and then I want the message to be very authentic to you. So I'm never writing in my voice. It shouldn't sound like me. I'm writing in the client's voice. And the reason that that's so important to me is that I want there to be a connection between the content that someone is putting out and then whatever is going to happen after the content. So, like, stop me if you have any questions, but essentially what I'm doing, a lot of my clients are using their content to, like, let's say we're writing a book, then they want the book to bring in new clients. They want it to build their brand. They want to get on podcasts. They want to get speaking engagements. So I need whatever we're putting out to be in their voice so that when they go on to the next thing, there's no jarring disconnect between their content. So again, it's not just content marketing, because we're not just marketing. We're taking an expert and we're listening for the value that they can deliver to their readers, to their clients, and then we're delivering that value in a way that's really truly authentic to their voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, not only does it make sense, but I would imagine that one common objection, and I'll confess that we hear this objection from listeners in our audience all the time, Kristen, is that people convince themselves, maybe this isn't a uniquely entrepreneurial trait, maybe it's a uniquely human trait, but people have a tendency to convince themselves that they are so very unique that what they hear on podcasts, what they read in business books cannot possibly apply to their business because their business is so different. And Kristen, I would imagine in your industry, even more so, we all believe that our voice is unique. And for example, I'm very excitable. I have a lot of energy. I think that's evident. Yeah, exactly. I think it's very evident to anyone that interacts with people like you and I. And I remember I used to have the thought, Kristen, AI helped to change that a little bit, where I used to think nobody could mirror this. I'm so full of excitement. I'm so full of quotes, stories, experiences, all these things that I love to share with other people. How the heck do you overcome that objection with people who think that you can't possibly mirror their voice?
That's a good question. And I will tell you, you're exactly right. We always get on a prospecting call, whether we're going to be writing articles for people or books. But let me just take the books because that's generally what we do the most of. And books, there's something about books that they're like your baby, right? They're so near and dear to your heart versus just an article. So that's one thing that we hear on every prospecting call is, how are you going to capture my voice? You can't possibly capture my voice. And when I give them, I got to say, Brian, every time when I give them their first round of content, people are like, oh, it sounds so much like me. How did you do that? It sounds like me, but it's even maybe more like me or better than me or whatever they say. And that always makes me feel really good because I feel like, okay, we did our job. But the way that we do it, yes, everybody is unique. And also, we're not necessarily as unique as we think we are in how we talk. So I am somebody who, for example, I jokingly will tell people, like, I'm like, why say it in one word when you could say it in 1,000 words, right? Like, then there's other people who are very like staccato and they don't use a lot of words or whatever. So what I do is I get on a Zoom call, and I record everything. And in those conversations, I start hearing ways that people say certain things, ways they explain concepts. Do they talk a lot? Are they super excitable? Are they kind of more sit back and stoic? Are they all of those things? And that's what I use to bring forth the ideas. So what I'll do is I'll ask people for stories, like, hey, give me stories. What was a time that you applied this thing? And then we can put the story in there. And again, it's all just hearing how they talk, but because it's on a recording, it's really not as difficult as you would think it is. And I don't know if that's just the secret sauce, but it's always come like that for me. It's never been difficult to capture somebody's voice in a way that really resonates. And then there's always the people who, and I welcome this, it's a collaboration, who go, wow, you really nailed it here. And in this section, I didn't really like it. So then, okay, great, let's talk about that section. And usually with a few minor tweaks, we can get it to where they're super wildly excited, which is what I want. Like, honestly, Brian, my goal and of course this depends on the person, but if I can get somebody to cry because they're so happy at how it came out, then I'm like, yeah, good job, Kristen, you did it, you nailed it.
Yeah, I love that, Kristen. That is a very aspirational goal that just knowing as much as I do about your work, it seems like you absolutely nail that. And part of it, it sounds like what comes natural, and I'm going to put that in air quotes because I think anything that looks natural is because of reps. And you've obviously done this for quite some time and you've put the practice in. But what I'm really hearing is that you're able to get into character, and people who think, oh, how could Kristen sound like me? When script writers are writing for movies, nobody's ever been Captain Jack Sparrow before, but they can get into character and write like Jack Sparrow. And of course, Johnny Depp brings it to life in such an incredible way. But I think it's important for us to recognize that people can role play. People can step into character and make it sound that way. But Kristen, that then brings up the authenticity factor. And I know that a lot of people think, oh, I'm not going to write a book and I'm not going to be the one to write it. That doesn't feel very authentic. How's that going to represent me? Please address that concern, because I feel like here in the middle of 2025, there's so many different angles to take this from.
Yeah. So, and I feel like we're going to end up going deeper on this, but overview, like 10,000, 30,000 foot view it is always authentic. So as a ghostwriter, like, let's say, Brian, that you wanted to write a book about how to be the best podcast host ever. I don't know how to be a podcast host. Like, I've never hosted a podcast. I've never done any of that. So none of the ideas that you and I would put in the book are mine. None of them are coming from me. My job is not to, and I know that this is different. Other ghostwriters will do this. I don't know how they do it, but some people will say, have a 30-minute conversation and then they're going to produce a whole book. No. That's not what I do. So you and I are working together literally from the very first moment, which is positioning. I'm finding out who's your ideal audience. What are their pain points? What benefits do you think that the book can offer? What are your tone? What's your voice? All the way through to outlining. We'll create like a roadmap of the book, every chapter, and then you and I are talking through on a Zoom call every single chapter. So really, I don't think of it as inauthentic, because if it wasn't for you or whoever the author is, that book is never going to get written. And if it's not for your unique perspective and the way that you present ideas, that book won't come out the way that it is. I'm sort of the tool that's listening, providing a sounding board for you as to what we could do to further the reader's experience, and then taking the message that you give me and putting it in a way that flows well, that's structured well, that resonates with people, that's interesting and engaging. That's my job. But the main thrust of the book is coming from you or the article. I am not creating content.
I think that's such an important way that you articulated that, is that literally a lot of us that think, maybe we will influence the content that you write and that you create. It sounds like that's not the case, that we actually are the creators. You are merely the curator that just puts those words in a perfect way on paper. And that's so interesting to hear, is that you actually are not a creator in any way. You bring what's already existing inside of all of us as your end clients to life. And that makes me ask this, and Kristen, I don't know if this is some of the secret sauce, but how the heck do you collect those things? How do you collect the stories? How do you collect the experiences, the quotes, the influences? I would imagine that's part of a fun and deep process that you go alongside your clients on. What does that look like?
Yeah, it is fun. And I think it is part of the secret sauce, because this is partly how people are unique. Not everybody and you probably know this as a podcast host, not everybody's going to respond the same way. You can't draw things out of people all the same way. So for me, one thing I have found almost universally is, if you're interested in what someone's saying, and they can see that you're interested and they feel it. People love to talk about themselves. They love to share. So if they see that someone is excited, they're going to start getting excited too. And they're going to start sharing stories because they know that you're engaged, right? So that's at the core, maybe one of the fundamental things. But then what I do is, depending on the client, and it's a discovery process, I often will say, okay, we are going to talk about podcasting, and we're going to, maybe the first chapter is how to get started. So then I would say, like, hey, Brian, think of some questions, or here are some questions, like, what equipment do we need? Is there any experience needed? Like, I'm kind of just shooting from the hip in what I think some questions would be. I send them to you ahead of time. You have a chance to look at them. Now, some people will script it out, like they give me a presentation. That's how they think. Other people are like, oh, when you asked me that, it made me think of this story. And let me tell you about a crazy time when I started to do a podcast and I didn't have the right equipment and it turned into this whole thing. Like everybody thinks differently. So I'm sort of poking around and feeling what can I do to get the best stories out of them? And then what I'll do is I'll say, much like you do, hey, when you said XYZ, that made me think of this. I have a question now. Do you have a story about that? Do you have an example you could give? And these are thought leaders. I'm working with thought leaders in their field. So they have the experience, they have the expertise, they have the stories. They just need somebody to give them permission to start thinking and really diving into their own expertise and feeling safe and sharing the stories that honestly, maybe they've shared stories with people before and people are like, oh gosh, this is boring because they've heard it a bunch of times. I never do that. I'm genuinely excited whether I'm talking to somebody about private equity or we did a book on antibiotic stewardship. That one was wildly exciting because the guy was so into it. So I got into it. Sports psychology, health and wellness, like whatever the thing is, I just get super excited about it. And I think that's the secret. You know?
I love that. I would argue that excitement fuels so much good stuff in life and in business.
Yes. And so that's a tip I will give people. If you're an entrepreneur or somebody out there that wants to work with a ghostwriter, make sure you have a video call with the ghostwriter before you hire them and like watch their body language. Are they excited? Are they leaning forward? Are they engaged? Are they nodding? Or are they kind of sitting back or looking at their phone or yawning or whatever? Like if you get that vibe on the initial call, that's not the ghostwriter for you. You want somebody who is wildly excited because they're the ones who are going to keep your book or your articles interesting and engaging to readers.
Yeah, so well said. Kristen, you keep bringing up a book, and that's one thing that I know so many entrepreneurs are interested in. Quite frankly, I'll just say it here on the air, is that in 2015, when I wrote the book, Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur, it changed my life, Kristen. It led to the starting of this podcast. This podcast would not exist were it not for that book, and so many things about me building my audience and people getting excited about the podcast. And a decade later, here we are, and we have so many people that started out because they read the book. And you talked about chapters, Kristen, and I feel like that's like the very basic building block of a book, which intimidates a lot of people of saying, I don't know what the chapters will be. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know what goes in the book. Is that something that a ghostwriter helps us map out? Is that a solution that you bring to the table? How do you even start to formulate what goes into the book, in what order, and what's covered?
Yeah, so it depends on the person. So a lot of people will come to me and say, I've been thinking about this book for forever. This is kind of the chapter order. This is what I want to cover. But if somebody comes to me and has absolutely no idea, we start with that positioning call, like I was saying. So I already have an understanding of who their readers are, what the pain points are, and what the solutions are. And then from there, and this is probably part of the secret sauce for me, I can start to formulate an outline, and then I'll send it to them and say, hey, this is the outline I come up with. We don't have to be wedded to it, but how does this feel? They'll, futz around with it and move things around till we're both happy with it. And then as we're going through the content, it always changes. So I would say, never get hung up on your outline, but that way you just want to make sure that you're hitting all the pain points and all the benefits. If you aren't working with a ghostwriter, that's one place that ChatGPT or something could be very helpful. Maybe ask it, what are the top issues that somebody has that I can help solve, whatever your product is or whatever. So you could kind of get a list of questions that people are asking about your product or your service or your brand or your industry, and you could kind of go in a way that makes sense. And then once you're in the actual act of writing, it's all going to start to flow and look clear. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And especially when you use the word flow, I know that for so many people, they think about the opposite of flow, which is staring at a blank page of paper. And they think, how do I even start? I can't start flowing until I've actually started the thing. And Kristen, it's really interesting. I promise I'd have some selfish questions today, and this is probably one of them.
Okay,
What's really cool to me is that you work with entrepreneurs and thought leaders, among others. You obviously work with a lot of different people, but when I think particularly about entrepreneurs and thought leaders, one of the benefits there is that we all naturally create content. We've got transcripts from our Zoom meetings with clients. I'm a podcaster. I've got thousands of transcripts of me talking in various capacities. We all have so much content. And I would imagine that in today's day and age with AI, with transcripts, with all of these tools that we have, it's probably easier than ever before to start compiling all this stuff. How has that influenced your work? Is that something that you leverage? Like, could you take a bunch of my transcripts and you and I have a conversation off the air about how to bring them to life? How do you leverage that stuff?
Yeah, I do work with a lot of people who want to just give transcripts like what you're saying, because a lot of the people who hire me, and entrepreneurs, were busy, so we don't have a ton of time. So absolutely, I can do that. So I can take the transcripts and parlay that in. Once I have my positioning, it all comes back to the positioning and my roadmap. I can take the transcripts, go, okay, this looks important. Let me throw this in here. Let me fiddle around with this. That doesn't seem as important. So I put it in what I call the parking lot, so that people have it for maybe the next book, or I don't know, content on social media or whatever. And then there's a lot of people who want to talk it out. And Brian, I've never been somebody who, and maybe this is partly why I love ghostwriting, I've never been somebody who struggles with, what do I say, in front of a blank screen. That's never been an issue. So if I have somebody who can start to talk about things a little bit, I can always create content from that. And then I can send, like, let's say that they're not giving me much that's really good. That's fine, because I can create content from that, send it to them, and then they're no longer looking at a blank screen, and they can go, oh, wow, okay, now I sort of see how the process is working, and now I can give you stuff that I think would be really helpful. So maybe that's part of the uniqueness. It varies by person how we get it, but presentations, transcripts, talking it out. Some people send me stuff that they've already written. There's just a whole host of ways to get at the content. There's no one right way.
Yeah, speaking of that uniqueness, let's talk about your biggest competitor these days, which is, of course, a lot of people think, why hire a ghostwriter when I can just turn to AI and I can feed all of these things to AI? Of course, when you talk about mimicking our human voices, it takes a human to mimic a human voice. Kristen, what's your response to people who are thinking, and I'm sure a lot of people in your industry, by the way, every industry has those naysayers who are saying, it's going to replace us. That's it. Ghostwriting is going to be no more. Email marketing is going to be no more. I hear in every single industry. What's your response?
So I had an existential crisis about AI when it first started. The same friend who told me, hey, like, maybe get into ghostwriting, give this a try. I remember she just casually texted me and was like, wow, ChatGPT is amazing and it might replace ghostwriting or whatever. And she didn't mean anything by it. I think she was excited, and that spun me out. I was like, that's it. It's over, blah, 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 right? That was probably, I don't know, 2 years ago or something. I'm roughly guessing. And let me tell you, Brian, ChatGPT, I am not worried at all about AI replacing us anytime soon, because it's not got the human touch. It's not got the ear to listen, to be that advocate for readers. It doesn't have a way to tell somebody, I need you to go deeper. I need you to give me more actionable strategies. What you just said is good, but it's the same fluff that's out there in a million different things. Here's a unique angle we could take to separate you and really highlight your expertise. So yes, you could throw some stuff up on a screen, and ChatGPT could maybe 50% of the time create something decent, but it can't get at that really intense ghostwriting thing. And I'll tell you, I've had so many people who come to me and say, I tried to write my book or articles using ChatGPT. It's complete crap. So now I need help, right? Like, I'm just not worried about it. I think it's good to help people with brainstorming. I think it's good to help people with researching and those kind of things. But as far as a writer is concerned, Claude and ChatGPT and all these ones, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I love that. Kristen, I've got to
Yeah.
ask you about this while we're together. Apologies in advance for putting you on the spot because I'm sure there's
No?
no one particular answer on this, but I once saw a cartoon graphic of it was a graveyard of unfinished books, and there are way more of those than there are of finished books, which
Yeah.
it's, of course, it's because it's a labor of love. I mean, a book is a huge undertaking that takes a lot of time. What does timeline look like when working with a ghostwriter like you? How long does it take? What's the process look like? I'd love for you to share some of those insights.
Yeah, it does take a long time. So what I tell people, and usually we come in below this, but it's that whole like, I get this wrong all the time. It's the
Under
under
promise,
promise.
over deliver.
I just tell people that I overpromise and underdeliver, and then they look at me like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, it's whatever the one is." So yeah, so what I generally tell people for the ghostwriting portion is from the time we have our kickoff call, which is that positioning call that I keep nattering on about, to the time when we have a locked manuscript, meaning there's no more changes, it's good. The only changes that might come will be in the editing stages if there's, if the editors or the proofreaders find something. That process takes about 4 to 6 months. But of that, they're going to have maybe 10 to 15 hours. So 10 to 15 Zoom calls with me. So, and then the rest of the time I'm writing and they're reading it and then giving their feedback and I'm revising and stuff. So it's not so incredibly fast. I mean, it's still quicker than a lot of people who are taking a year or 2 years or whatever, but it's of 4 to 6 months to do it really well. And then if we're going to publish for them, that's another 4 to 6 months. So in general, we're looking at a year from start to finish, maybe a little under 10 to 12 months, something like that. But of the time, the active time that they have to give me is with all the ghostwriting and the publishing is maybe 20, 25 hours, something like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what I've been really excited about you and I getting on air together, because for so many people, I keep talking about the fact that we delegate other aspects of our business. Why are we not delegating something that can position us as an authority in our industry? I mean, again, I just want to reiterate, look at what my book did to my career. Look at what it did for this podcast launching, for our worldwide audience in over 150 countries. It's a powerful mechanism, but you and I have mostly only talked about half of the equation, which is writing the book. I really appreciate the fact that you bring the publishing to life as well. Talk to us about that side of it.
Yeah, that part is, so I am a firm believer in like you talk about delegating, right? So I'm a firm believer in understanding where your expertise lies. My expertise is in the content development and the ghostwriting and everything. So I do work with the publishing manager. So I have a publishing manager, a couple of them, that really spearhead that. But essentially the publishing came to life because I had a client who said, okay, now you've written the book, can you publish it? And I was like, I don't know. And he said, well, I've published, I've gone through the publishing process 2 or 3 times already, so I can kind of guide you through, and this could be a test run. So he was kind enough and gracious enough to kind of walk me through all of that, and it went really, really well. And then, to be honest, I had another client who, because I thought, okay, I'm an excellent publisher, so I can handle anything. So then there was a client, it didn't go so well. She was difficult, and that's when I brought in that first publishing manager. So I now have somebody who has managed the publishing process for Wall Street Journal, New York Times, hundreds and hundreds of books. So, but in general, when we do the publishing process, I'm still there, but she's spearheading most of it. So that means we're taking it through developmental edit to make sure that it's structured properly, that it flows, that there's no gaps. We go through a line edit to make sure that line by line everything sounds good and we're not overusing phrases and things like that. We'll do the cover design, the layout, we'll do proofreading, we'll do the back cover copy, right, which is like the author bio and book description. We'll do the audiobooks, we'll do the marketing. We're a one-stop shop so that people they've already built up trust in me. They know that I'm going to give them a good product, so they don't have to go and try to assemble that whole team, which is a lot of time and money, and you don't know if you're getting scammed and all that kind of stuff. So that's how the publishing kind of came to life for us.
Ooh, it's cool hearing the thought process behind it as well, which really alludes to one of my favorite aspects of all of these conversations is that, Kristen, you're not just a ghostwriter. You are one of us. You are a fellow entrepreneur and founder. And that's why I always ask this question at the end of every episode. It's super broad. You can take it in literally any direction you want. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and a whole heck of a lot of probably wannabe authors out there as well. As a fellow entrepreneur, what's that best piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
For me, the biggest difference that it took me from, like, I love this entrepreneur to entrepreneur because I feel like this is what we all do. For me, it was truly recognizing that while at the end of the day, we are the heads of our own business and we're the ones sort of the last stop, the buck stops with us and all of that. Remember, because I think so many entrepreneurs, and I'm like this too, we're kind of control freaks. We want to manage every little part of the process because nobody could do it as well as us. But remember that there are plenty of people out there who can do it just as well, maybe better, and lean on those resources. There's marketers who can help you. There's coaches who can help you. There's all sorts of people who can help you. So don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you have to go it alone. If you need help with something, there is a resource out there that can help you. And don't be afraid to trust that somebody else can help you get to where you need to go. That's probably my biggest advice because I struggled with that, Brian. I really did. And when I stopped struggling so hard and started to trust other people, things exploded. They really did.
So well said. It's scary advice, especially if we've never experienced that before. But there's so many quotes out there. I forget who. Maybe it's a Helen Keller quote that said, if you want to go far, go alone. If you want to go fast, or if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that it's such a true quote. And Kristen, the fact that you come on here and so generously share with us, it's not your first rodeo. You've published so many books along the way. So for anyone who's trying to do it the first time, of course, it's confusing. And the fact that we can leverage incredible people and experts and resources like you, I'm so grateful for the way that you show up and share so generously with others, which is also why I'm excited for you to drop some links because I knew that time would be limited together today, but I'm so very excited for everyone who wants to go deeper into all the incredible things that you're doing. So Kristen, where should listeners go from here? Drop those links on us.
Yeah, so I would say the website is the best place to start, and it links to all the social things. So that is elitecontentcreation.net, and that'll get you to the ghostwriting, that'll get you to the about us, about our team, the self-publishing, all of the things. And then you can also go to chevalpress.com, CHEVAL press.com, which will just link back to that website. So those are the two best ways to kind of find us.
Yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. Scroll right down. You don't have to memorize any links. You can click right on through. We're also linking to Kristen's personal LinkedIn because you've heard how much of a joy she is to interact with one-on-one. If you want to reach out to her directly and continue the conversation and talk about your unique needs, your business, your thought leadership, don't be shy. Kristen is so much fun to engage with. So listeners, definitely check out the show notes. Otherwise, Kristen, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. This was an absolute blast. Oh my gosh, this was so fun, and I cannot believe how much the time sped by. Like, this is wild. I'm like, what? I want like 30 more minutes. Like, what's happening? So thank you so much. It's been a joy.